said in the intro, we are going, our first topic is going to be tackling the upcoming parliament now that we're over with the presidential elections. The regulations and measures of the upcoming parliamentary elections will be announced in the coming stage, and ahead of the expected announcement, we heard, or news came to us that several factions and political movements are trying their best to collect themselves and form coalitions and fronts to be able to join the next parliament. The details is going to be with our prominent guest, who is going to be live with us here in the studio, Dr. Freddy Elbaiady, member of Supreme Committee of the Egyptian Social Democratic Party and former member of Parliament. Good morning, Dr. Elbaiady.
Good morning, and Ramadan Kareem, everybody.
Same here. Thank you very much.
A very good morning to you, sir, and you're most welcome in this episode of The Breakfast Show. As Dina said, we are in such a turning point in Egyptian modern history in general. And regarding the political atmosphere, we are all waiting for the new parliament, as under the new constitution, it's going to shoulder more responsibilities, even, I think, more than any other era in Egyptian modern history. But as we were speaking just before going to air, according to those coalitions, to be strong coalitions, we should have first strong parties. And strong parties on the ground, dealing with people, knowing well how to represent them, knowing well how to choose among their members the one who is going to be an MP or a member of the parliament. To what extent these elements or these needs are met on the ground?
Okay, I'll start from where you ended, at the political parties in Egypt. You know that we are in a state after the 25th of January revolution. Before that, there was no freedom of forming new parties, and the parties which were formed were actually not active enough. They were just cartoons, as you said.
Yep. Let's be more frank.
Yeah, after the 25th of January, and they opened the freedom to form new parties was easily for formation now. We have more than 85 political parties in Egypt, registered parties. Most of them, they are not even known, their names are not even known to the public. Speaking of the active parties now, we have 4 or 5 active parties. Only 1 or 2 parties of them who were formed earlier, before 25th of January. So to really evaluate the parties, we should consider 2 things. The first thing, that they are, the oldest one of them is only 2.5 years or maximum 3 years old. So they don't have history or ground time enough to judge them. If you compare them to, before 25th of January, you compare them to the National Democratic Party, which was the governing party, and it was old party, it has all the power and authority, and the Muslim Brotherhood, who has been working for more than 80 years, and they had the millions of dollars coming in to supply their activities,
they were the most organized.
Yeah. So now the parties are relatively newly formed. They don't have the funds enough to support their activities. And also, to judge a political party, we should differentiate between a political party and NGO. Because people sometimes expect a political party to act as NGO, to supply, and this is what the Muslim Brotherhood and the National Democratic Party was acting and working with the people at the same concept, that to supply their needs, to buy them food, to buy them clothes, to build some services to them. So this is not what a political party is for. Political party is to act on a political agenda, to have a program to work for, to apply for new laws. So to evaluate in a party in such an area, this party has either to form the government. So then you can see how this party will act if it's forming a government. And we didn't see any of the newly formed parties forming a government after the 25th of January revolution. Or to have a number of representatives in the parliament, and to see how this party is acting through its representatives in the parties. So till this moment, we didn't have this chance. The House of Representatives was formed for less than a year, and was dissolved, and then the Shura Council was formed with a vast majority of political Islamists, and then it was dissolved also in less than 1 year. So we didn't actually had a chance to evaluate parties acting in the parliament or in the government. So it's not fair enough to evaluate them at this time of the political life. And we are in a transitional time. So it's normal to have this number of political parties in a transitional time, more than 85. But by time, we'll see that some of these parties will disappear because when the people see how the parties are acting in the parliament, in the government, then they can differentiate and see which is a real political party. Yes. And which one will actually will be discriminated against by the people. They will see that this party is not acting, that supplying what they need, the agenda is not actually meeting their requirements. So we should actually empower the parties in the coming time. Political parties are not strong enough. Yes, they're not strong enough. But if we have the intention to have a political, democratic life, it cannot be done without political parties. So there should be political intention and intention of the people who are forming laws to empower these parties in the coming time. And this is also according to the Constitution. The Constitution says that political life is based on the political parties. So if we don't have political parties, or we don't give them the chance to act and to empower them, then we will not have a political life in the coming time.
Right. From the time now and until the parliamentary elections, do you think that this is time enough to empower or to implement what you're suggesting? And another more important question, which is, which system are we going to apply or implement? Is it the individual or the list, or the individual, and which is could be more preferable at this particular time in our lives, building on former experiences?
It's a little bit too late to speak about this now, because the law is already made and the elections will be done upon this law.
But it's very much controversial, and there are a lot of discussions and disputes, I may say, over this law.
But I would say my personal opinion, if we were actually aiming at empowering the political parties, we should lean more to the electoral list system. So this is a system which will empower the political parties. The individual system actually depends mainly on funding. If you're going to run for elections individual, you need funding for your campaign, and the kind of representatives that will be actually produced by individual system. You will be back to the old time elections, when we vote for a person because of the services he's doing to his local community, because he's going to build a hospital, or he's going to do some sewage system, or whatever he's going to do, kind of services, which is actually not the main role of the parliamentary representatives in the parliament. It's the role of the local city council and the village council to do such services. But in the old times, people used to vote for those who served them. They didn't actually vote for a political program or a political agenda. If we're speaking of electoral system, so then they will go by parties, by coalitions. So you will vote for example, for the religious coalition.
Sir, I'm sorry for the interruption, but I've noticed that you have repeated this more than once during your answers, that the Egyptians were all the time waiting for those who are going to give them services and to deal with parties as NGOs and something like that. We will not deny that we have 40% of our people who do not know how to write and read, and who want just to live in a nice way. But yet, don't you think that we have learned the lesson a little bit, and those things are not anymore going to be a way to the minds of Egyptians to force them to go and to vote for this and not to vote for that? Are we still that naive politically, I mean?
I believe that some people learn the lesson, but not everybody. Speaking of the majority of the people, speaking of the percentage of illiteracy, you'll see that not everybody learned this lesson. And I don't want to blame those people who are actually voting for those who will supply them the services, because they didn't find any other option. The role of the local city councils and the village councils was not done. They didn't find somebody to supply the service except for the parliamentary representative. And actually the National Party and the Muslim Brotherhood, they used to use this part and to control the votes by the services they were doing. So they intended to keep it this way. So they were, because they were able to supply the services, so they were buying the votes in a way or another.
Yep.
So it's not easy to change it in 1 or 2 years. It needs some time, and it needs the authorities and the laws to present first the local city councils and the village councils in a good way, and to let them do their role, so that they leave
activate the roles.
Yes, so that they leave the responsibility of the parliamentarians to act on the supervision of the government, controlling what the government is doing, and the lawmaking legislation process. So this is the main role of the parliamentarians. By time people can see that their services are actually met by those who are actually
representing them in the parliament.
Yeah, and you will actually the parliamentarians will supply services, but in a different way, in a national way. Like, for example, our political party, we have an agenda and a program for health reformation system. If you apply this, you will supply health services to everybody in the local villages and in the city. But if I am an individual and I'm running in the parliament, my main concern will be to build a local hospital in my village. Difficult. That's it. And it's not a health reformation system. But speaking of a party and their agenda, they think more broadly, and they think more nationally, and in long way term this will actually be more supportive. But building a hospital will not actually help even the local people, because building a hospital, they don't have enough doctors, don't have trained personnel to serve them. So by the time this hospital will not even supply the needs they need. Yeah.
Dr. Elbaiady, observing you as a former Shura Council member, of course you have worries concerning the upcoming parliamentary, the upcoming parliament, just like everyone else. So we have seen the presidential elections. The first 2 days there was a relatively low turnout, and they said there was a boycott from the youth. So those are worries that might be transmitted to you people once you have it in mind to nominate yourself to run for the next parliament as a member. But that was also registered by political analysts, like this was a good sign or a good signal for democracy, because it did not reflect thuggery, it did not reflect the electoral bribes, it did not reflect the usual typical image that we used to see during the Mubarak era. So talk to us about your future worries concerning the parliamentary elections and the things that you might be also feeling optimistic about.
Starting by the worries, I'm not much worried about the people contributing to the election and voting for, because it's much different than the presidential election. The situation is different. The presidential elections, especially the last one, some people was not enthusiastic enough to go, and the media played a role in this, and some people thought that the result is almost known before, and there was the competition is not real competition, or
do you
not
think
strong
it was
enough
transparent
competition.
enough?
Not transparency-wise, but they thought there was a big gap in the two competitors in the elections, and one of them is going to win anyway. So why would I go and vote for? Nothing about transparency, but they thought that there's no strong competition. Yeah, kind of. But the parliamentary election is not decided, and there will be strong competition, and people will go for their candidates to vote for. Some people are actually now drawing back from the political contribution after 2 revolutions and long time, and some people think that not much changes are seen in the ground. So some people will be actually going back and withdrawing from the political contribution, but I believe there will be enough young people going, and many people will be going and voting for the people. I'm a little bit worried about some figures coming back to the elections. People who are actually decided to be away from the political life, those who depended on their money, and their names were actually connected with some political corruption.
This what came to my mind when my dear colleague Dina spoke about the words. The list system, is it going to be a way for some people to infiltrate or to have their sneaky ways into the parliament, despite the fact that they are not welcomed anymore on in the political arena?
I think it's the other way around, because speaking of the list system, for example, in our coalition with the Egyptian Social Democratic Party, what we call الوفد المصري coalition, we have conditions for anybody who is going to join our lists. We will not have people who were actually connected with political corruption and people who were actually connected to Muslim Brotherhood or any religious-based political parties. This is our conditions. So people who trust our party and our condition, we will go and vote for our list, making sure that we are actually filtering those people and we are actually examining everybody who is in our list. But speaking of individuals, you cannot control which one will run in the election. Anyone has the freedom to run for individual elections. And if they have the money, if they have the people who will vote for, they will win. So sneaking through the individual system, I think there will be some people sneaking more in the individual system than the electoral. Yeah, because it will be known that this electoral list is made by the religious-based political groups, or this is made by the civil current group. So if you trust this group or this party, you know that those people actually they checked their people and they will make sure that everybody who is in their list is actually meeting their political agenda, and we have what we call a written agreement that all those political parties who are sharing in the political coalition, they will share in these principles and they will actually even act in the parliament upon these principles. So it's kind of political coalition, not only electoral coalition.
Right. As a former member of parliament, you must be having on your package or on your agenda on your list a number of issues that you would like to address. Of course, now the arena is full of the issues that some people are complaining about, lowering incriminating the children who commit crimes, and there have been several cases and people have been complaining. And also we have lifting the subsidies or cutting the subsidies on fuel, which have raged some people, and people have been complaining about, and some people were supporting, some people were opposing. And we have other issues that we have the protest law that some people are also protesting about. So what do you have on your list in case you are going to be in the next parliament and you're looking forward to address?
Actually, some laws that it's mandatory to be done by the parliament that will meet the new constitution. The new constitution articles have some very wonderful articles, but it needs to be interpreted into applied laws. So this has to be done. My personal concern, I might believe that in order for this country to progress and develop, we should focus mainly on education system. We have to change all the system of education. I'm not speaking about building schools or having more number of teachers, but the whole system has to be changed, including the way of training the teachers, the curriculums, the way of education. If we act upon this, we will have a different coming generation. We need to invest in this. We need to invest more money in the budget of the education, starting from the kids in the kindergarten, to have public schools offering the education in a perfect way to everybody, be affordable to everybody. If we do this, we can change many things. We can have a different coming generation. Of course, we have other issues like the health system. And me being a medical doctor, I'm actually dealing with many problems, with the health problems. This has to be actually addressed.
What's your specialty, sir?
I'm a radiologist.
It has to be, there has to be a complete makeover in the health file.
That's true, yeah.
You have any suggestions?
Suggestions are easily to be said, but most of them depending on the budget. The budget of the health system is actually very low, not enough to do this reformation. but we should start in investing changing the whole system, the medical system training, the medical doctors training, the nurses training, the equipment, the way of the health insurance system to have the fair health insurance to everybody, affordable to everybody.
Sir, what you're saying is great. And for me, as a very simple citizen on the ground, how should I know about you and about your strategies, about your plans, your programs, about your coalition, your party? How are you propagating for yourself as a party, as a coalition, and as a candidate?
This is actually the role of the campaigns for the elections, the coming time when the people will be officially candidates for elections, either the parties or the individuals. There will be different ways
I mean, is it going to be through media, through meeting people on the ground, through having conferences or holding conferences to meet with people wherever they are, I mean, across Egypt? What?
It has to be done through all these aspects. Media is an important venue for this. Having conferences on the ground and speaking with the people, electronic media and publications, all these ways of information. We need this, and this is actually tools of the campaigns. So it will be actually used by the political parties and coalitions and by individuals who are running as individuals to show their agendas and their ways. And as you mentioned, the way that people use in the campaigns, sometimes you say the wonderful projects, and practically when people come to applications, you find these things are not really applied.
Stereotype or cliches.
Yeah. So it's not actually how the people are promoting themselves or how they are campaigning, though it's important. But
because of this, sir, I'm asking, because whenever we are talking about the coming phase or the coming stage, it's going to be different, and Egyptians are not anymore the same Egyptians of before the 25th of January revolution. So the tactics or the new ways of propagating for yourself should also be different. What is the difference you have?
Well, the method of information is not much changing. How to inform the people about your agenda is not much changing. But it's important not only to tell what are your intentions, your good intentions, but people should be sure how if these people or parties are able to do what they are saying or not. You should show a practical tools or approaches or plans to do this. If you are speaking of good health system, how are you going to do it? So people should actually look for practical ways, because everybody would say, I'm looking for the best education system, I'm looking for the best health system. But then those who are going to vote, they should check with the candidate and ask him, how are you going to do this? You should tell us.
It's not a matter of what, it's a matter of how.
Yes, this is an important thing. You need a big budget. How are you going to arrange for this budget? So people should actually ask for the how more than what. How are you going to do this? How are you going to reach these goals? And many people actually are now more aware about the system, more aware about the political events we had been through in the past time. So I think many people actually will be able to check this. I hope that the coming parliament will show some representatives who are really keen about long-term plans to progress in such a country, to progress, to apply the constitution, the new constitution in laws that will actually reach to the poorest villages, to the poorest individuals, those people
the low income in general.
Yeah. And we need actually to take care more of those people when we do political reformation, when we do economic reformation, we should be very careful about those people. There is a large number of people who are not actually, they are striving every day to get their daily needs. So when we do some prices rise or some cutting of the subsidization of the economic supplies, we should actually be very careful about those people and prepare how to protect them.
So be studied first. Mentioning representatives, and you as a former member of parliament and as a politician, probably we have suffered or we have learned lessons from the former parliament of 2012 that it wasn't equally or proportionally balanced. There was a larger faction and a minor faction. Now, maybe the 2014 parliament, the same thing is going to happen, but the other way around. So what's your perfect idea of an ideal parliament, given the fact that other factions, different factions, like, for example, political Islam, and I don't mean anyone in particular, aren't fit enough or qualified enough or real enough to be able to represent their own people? So how this problem is going to be resolved, or would be the parliament better off without that particular faction? How do you see it?
I cannot actually exclude any individual or faction and say they don't have the right to run for the elections. Everybody has the right to run. But
it might not be the right, but it might be the qualification.
Yeah, people should actually have the experience, and they saw that the past time they had seen in the previous parliament how the people who used the religious slogans and the were not actually intending to apply religion,
regardless of whatever religion.
Yeah.
It might not be Islam or anything.
No, speaking mainly of using the religious slogans as a way to reach their political agendas. So people actually now they know well that those who are actually meaning what they say and those who are actually deceiving them. So they would have kind of differentiating in the coming time. I don't think that the coming parliament will have a majority of political party representatives, but will have, according to the electoral system, the electoral law that will be applied, there will be more individually based representatives, more business people, because they have the money and they can run more in the individual system, which is 80% of the seats for the individual system. So it will be more for the individuals and for the business people who have the money the money power to win an individual system basis. But we'll still have a number for the political figures and for the political party representatives, and they will show their political agenda in a way in the parliament, and they will actually have the chance to represent their political plans.
Right. Dr. Freddy Elbaiady, member of Supreme Committee of Egyptian Social Democratic Party and former member of Parliament, thank you very much for coming and for your input.
And thank you really very much for your frank answers and your open way to discuss everything. Thank you very much and have a very good day.
You're welcome, you too.
And now it's Dina Yunus and one of her exclusive reports on what's happening on the tourism here in Egypt, giving you the latest in that field.
The most famous tomb amongst the 1,000 tombs of Amarna is the tomb number 25 that belongs to A. A was the high priest of god Aton during the reign of King Akhenaton. He also has a tomb in the Valley of the Kings in Luxor.
After the death of Akhenaton, Egypt passed by a short period of internal troubles which endangered the throne. But thanks to I and his hidden role to support Semenkhkara, the other brother of Akhenaton, to destroy Nefertiti's plans against him and to rule